Dearest, gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the ton. We are your effervescent hosts, your neighbourhood-friendly Kiwi, Tash from Middle-earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, whose current chapter of her story takes place in Ohio. Now settle down onto your favorite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and deep diving into the connections of our favorite characters.
If you are not up to date with season 3, please go and watch that first and pop back once you are all caught up, as this podcast will contain spoilers. And just a side note here that we did a double recording last week, and unfortunately our second recording was lost, and so we are having to re-record. So if we do cover items that we did cover in the first episode, we apologize for that. It's quite difficult when we do multiple recordings at once to discern what was recorded in which episode.
I blame ADHD. In the last episode, we began discussing the side stories. We covered all side stories introduced from the beginning through the Livingston Garden Party, saving the Bridgerton siblings for later discussion. And now we pick up with these very siblings and flow into the stories introduced at the Danbury Ball. As always, we love a good stroll down Tangent Lane, and the side stories are plentiful, so we may have a 3-parter on these stories as well.
Now we must make haste into today's episode. Jumping into today's episode, we are going to start out by talking about our quiet queen, Francesca Bridgerton. So I love the start of the episode starts out, and we've got always one of my favorite setups for any of the filming is when all the siblings are together. Well, I mean, we don't have Daphne anymore, but we get Kate in her place, and that's a pretty nice trade-off in my opinion, because she's really... It's the first time that we see her like fitting in with the family dynamic. She just slots straight in and just gets along with everyone. So we've got the whole family sitting outside of Francesca's door, waiting for her to come out to make her debut into society. And you get to kind of see all the different personalities of each Bridgerton. You've got Hyacinth, who's excited. She wants to know all the gossip, and another sibling on the marriage mart means extra gossip for her. You've got Violet, who is just desperate, like, oh, everything went astray last year with Eloise going onto the marriage mart. So this is my redemption arc for a daughter who is willing to be married off.
Yeah,
Eloise...
she's definitely seeking redemption and does not want to talk about last year.
No, that is definitely one of her flaws, is she doesn't really talk, to Eloise about what had happened. We don't see any conversation between Eloise and her mother about the missteps taken and the whole Lady Whistledown article. I'm sure they did in the country, but we don't see it. So
I'm not so sure, because Eloise talks about not wanting to talk about a lot of things because she was heartbroken, and it's still such a bone of contention. Like it's the elephant in the room, because Anthony's the one, Eloise says she'll come out when she wants, and Benedict's like, oh, like you did last year, like you were cool with it last year or whatever. And she starts, and Violet's like, this is not last year. Like she's all like,
and if we're going to talk about Eloise, like the whole, she says, still getting over the heartbreak, but this was her first heartbreak. Theo was her first heartbreak. And the only person who knows about it is the one person that she can't talk to about it. And that's Penelope.
Right.
So,
and I love the imagery at the door too, where everybody's facing the door but her.
Yeah,
she's against the wall facing away. She's like, I'm not ready to face this. This is like triggering me. It's like
PTSD from last year.
Yeah.
So, and then we have Kate and Anthony just casually stroll up. From what country, from what honeymoon, I don't know. Like, why were they not
coming out of nowhere?
Horse riding,
and
clearly.
This is the sad thing. And folks, this is the sad thing about having to re-record, because we had a jolly good time describing them like, apparating in, like from Harry Potter.
That's right.
And now, how do we recreate that now? I mean, that was so funny, and we lost it.
If there is any magic within me, it is the magical ability to drop Harry Potter references into just about any situation. So we were
Yeah.
discussing that just like Colin has gone off to Scotland to go to Hogwarts, Kate and Anthony have clearly been there learning how to apparate and disapparate because they just turn
They
up out
just
of
come and go
nowhere.
as they please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
I almost wanna see what's they're holding in their hands, like, because you gotta have that token or whatever to do the flu system. So I just kind of want to see. And maybe that's what Colin brought Anthony as a gift, because
well,
it is just a little paperweight thing.
Well, the Deluminator actually will take you from area to area. And that's the thing in the very first book and in the first movie, they
Hmm.
call it a putter outer. And that's the thing that Dumbledore
That
clicks
sucks the
to
lights.
take
Yeah.
to suck the lights. But actually, its real purpose is it will transport you to your where your heart's deepest desire is. So clearly they click it when they want to go have some honeymoon time. They go to where their heart's desire is, and then they return to family.
Okay,
Um,
so if we have any time consistency errors regarding India in season 4, we can just say they used the Illuminator. Colin must have used it for sure,
oh,
because how did
he's
he do
yeah.
17 cities in 4 months?
He- He's a wizard. Okay,
You're a
so
wizard, Colin.
yeah, I love that, in the very first kind of section of the season, we get the whole family together because it is always beautiful getting to see all of the Bridgerton personalities all together in one room.
Mm-hmm.
It's always hilarity ensues. Kate comes up and she says, Violet, what can I do to help? And she goes, well, could you get whoever it is to stop playing downstairs? She goes, well, I can, but is that not in fact Francesca? Like, who else would be playing piano in the house? Do you think your servants are just like casually in their spare time that they what spare
Right.
time?
And Daphne's not there, because the only other person we ever saw play that pianoforte was Daphne.
Yeah, which I'm actually surprised that we don't see Colin playing it because he is a singer, but I mean I know it was considered to be a feminine attribute to
Yeah.
play, but Mr. Darcy plays it with his sister, so clearly he has learned and he is he is a titled gentleman as well. So it's not like men are not allowed. And because Colin does have that more feminine side to him, I'm actually surprised that he doesn't play.
And I mean, he might. They just might not have shown it in the show.
Hmm.
And the thing is we know from the books that Penelope plays pretty well, but we never see Penelope, and they don't even have a piano in the Featherington home that I can see. So,
Okay, going to manifest this for us for next season. Please, for the love of the Bridgerton gods, please, 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 Venus, next season, I would like to see Colin serenading his wife, sitting at a piano, singing and playing to her. I will melt in my space. I will turn into a little goopy
worse,
chocolate ball.
worse, Goopy. They've already got a son. I want to see lullabies, my friend. Lullabies.
Oh, that would be the
I think that
sweetest.
would be adorbskis.
Yep. So we have the Bridgerton family basically like turning and running downstairs to go harass Francesca. They get down there, and I just love this interaction because Francesca is so absorbed in her playing that she's like, you don't exist until I finish playing the song. And Violet is getting
Mhm.
increasingly agitated at being ignored. I am mother. I am mama. Listen to me.
Mhm.
And you get the sassy first look at Francesca because when Hannah Dodd said that this season they make Francesca a little bit more sassy, and then upon my first watch, I'm like, what do you mean sassy? Like, this is a very quiet, very reserved, to be completely
Well, and,
honest,
and I
on my
felt
first.
like I felt like Francesca was sassy in previous seasons too. She had, like what she said about Colin getting a little more sun,
Yes.
like, you look like you've taken to the sun. Like, she is a little sassy, but she definitely is a little more sharp, a little more biting sassy
Yeah.
this season.
I would like to think that if she was in Bath with her auntie, I reckon that they possibly would have also had some of the other aunties visit her there. And like Aunt Billy, which is the favorite auntie from the Brooksby series, I think if she was visiting, she would definitely learn that kind of biting, snarky humor from her because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the Rokesby siblings are really sarcastic. And for anyone who's not a book reader, the Rokesby series it is a series that happens before the Bridgerton series. So it's still within the same world. And the Rokesbys were the neighbors to the Bridgerton. So even though they are kind of joined, like in the Rokesby series, we get to see baby Anthony, Benedict, and Colin within those series, especially in Andrew
Mhm.
Rokesby's book, which is my favorite. But those are also fantastic books. So if you've only read the Bridgerton books, heavily recommend going and reading the Rokesby ones as well. Because as we said in our last episode, that is probably the one that got deleted. This is a book and series combination podcast. We will be discussing little bits of both. We will try not to do all too many spoilers, but we love both. And if you haven't read any of the books, that's completely okay. We will be your eyes and ears and your knowledge of those books to fill in those little gaps that we have, because that is a big continuity error that we have within the series. Is I feel like we get a lot of quotes and things like that which do not make sense without the knowledge of the books. And I think the people who have written these probably do have some of that knowledge, and so they're taking for granted that there are viewers out there who don't.
Yeah. And like, I'm not sure if this was in the deleted one or not. We had talked about that they believe that the book fans are going to educate the series fans, like
Yes.
the ones who have not read the books, and that it's become our responsibility. And there is tension between book fans and series fans, like, get over it, so they didn't completely copy the books. And it's as a book fan, it's not about that. I've never been one to go in and be like, oh, they should have done this, it should have been like that. I'm always a person about areas of opportunity, though.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really hard to convey inner monologue, and Colin is an internalizer, so he's an inner monologuer. So I can see where that would be hard to convey. But we did get, because we always say side stories matter, we do have Jess Brownell in print saying they use side stories a lot in this season to
Yeah.
convey things for us to understand, because most of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton is Colin internal monologuing like
It
the whole
is.
time, trying to figure out his feelings, figure out why he's having them, figuring out why now. And I mean, unless you voice over the whole series, you can't really do that. So side stories are very important, and that's why this is probably going to turn into a three-parter, because
And you sent me a video the other day, and I'd actually like to put that onto our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton, because I thought it was actually a really good way of describing why we feel that little bit of separation from Colin's character this season. And it showed that in the previous seasons, the way that they scripted and filmed the season, it showed us why Anthony was the way that he is. It showed us both his kind of inner monologue, but then it also showed us scenes like his father dying, like his mother completely retreating within herself, to create the story of, hey, this is the traumas that he has and why. So it was showing us and telling us explicitly. But this season, they have basically just they have done more telling rather than showing us the reason behind. And so therefore we are left to guess our way through, or have to have a really high degree of character analysis of all the facial features, of all the little things. And that can be quite easily missed, especially for the people who only watch the series once or twice. Though for the two of us, we have watched it dozens of times at this point to help us build that understanding. So we'll put that video into the Facebook group so that it helps people understand a little bit why we have that separation from Colin's character this season. But going back to Francesca, I love, she finishes playing, she has a little barb at her mother, and Benedict makes his quippy little joke. They say, oh, it's not going to be like last year. And
oh, well, Anthony says, maybe we don't have to worry.
This one.
And then Benedict comes up and says, well, you do know what she was playing, don't you? She was playing Mozart's Funeral March. And then
Yes.
Violet's like, oh, holding her stomach. I'm just like, she needs to pop a Pepsid.
And for me, that moment was an absolute heart sink, because having watched it so many times now, when I see them playing Funeral March, I went for the initial feeling of, oh, it's foreshadowing of John dying. And then for you thought it was more.
Well, I still see that it's foreshadowing, because John dies. Her first husband passes away. This isn't her story this season. It's Colin's only. And I think a lot of people who are not book readers thought it was a dual season.
Yeah.
But it's not. This is just, we see her in her first season and getting her first marriage, because that helps build up to her actual season. But yeah, I thought that, because Fran is very much internal as well. She has a complete internal world, and she's a bit more emotionally mature, I feel like, than Eloise was, or even Colin still kind of is. Like,
Mhm.
and he grows a lot this season.
She
But I
knows
just
what she
feel like
needs.
Francesca, she's a lot more self-aware. She's able to assess what she needs, and she knows what she's going after. And I just felt like playing the funeral march there, knowing she's about to go debut, is like saying goodbye to her childhood in a marked way, like marking the moment. Like, this is my bridge. This is the funeral of me as a child and everything that I knew before, because now I'm moving on to a new life. And honestly, her life was pretty quiet. I know saying that in the Bridgerton home is crazy, but she would be off by herself a lot in the Bridgerton home, and she visited in Bath often,
Mhm.
for long periods of time. And it was very quiet because it was just the one aunt that she went to stay with. So she doesn't know what it's going to look like. And so that's pretty scary for her. And I think she wanted to mark the
Well,
occasion
Francesca,
for saying goodbye to her childhood and her what she has known.
and I can understand why just before they introduced the queen, Violet is trying to give her advice, and she's like, fear not, mama, like it's fine. She's always managing her mother. But the interesting part
She's the
is
one kid that can and does, yes.
she very much manages her mother, and they kind of make it out to be, oh, she's the one daughter that doesn't need her mother's advice. She doesn't want her mother's advice. But then in the very last episode, we see that, oh, actually, she's wrong. She's not even right about her own mind. The way that they have filmed this, and I know Jess Brownell has said that they will honor John before that they start
Mhm.
Michael/Michaela, but the way that they have filmed this seemed very, oh, well, John isn't the love of her life. He is a love, but not that all-encompassing love that Violet is talking about. And so I really dislike that, because Francesca had two loves of her life, but I
Yes.
digress. We go back and we're at the
But that, I mean, that fits. It actually fits into Francesca as a side story, because Violet at the Livingston Garden Party was talking to Kate, and she said, she is really composed. Just fell. She is really composed, but she's like, practicality,
yeah,
being practical is not love. And I
no,
really want to see how that plays out. And that's funny,
a very foreshadowing line.
that feeds into the Penelope and Colin thing, because Penelope is definitely also going in with practicality in mind.
Yeah.
And that just gets, she ends up going through a maelstrom and this huge storm, and comes out with a great love in the end. But Francesca goes in practical, thinks she's fallen in this great love. And then when it doesn't play out how she thought, and I think that's also why, this isn't this episode, a side story from this episode, but the conversation between Lord Anderson and Violet talking about their first loves,
Yeah.
his being.
Okay, this is one of those side stories that is massively playing into the main plot. And
Mhm.
this is an active theory that I've just come up with here. But
You're welcome. I teed you up, but
you've
yes.
heard it here first, folks. So you know how we have all the Marina, Penelope. Oh, he chose Marina over Penelope. I think one of the big points of this season is you have different kinds of love in your life, and previous loves do not retract away from your current love. You can love people in different capacities, and Colin may have loved Marina to some degree, puppy love, whatever kind that you want to call it. It was love to some degree. Same as Theo. Eloise loved Theo. That was her first love. It's not going to be the great love of her life, but it was her first little temptation of the heart. All those kinds of things. I truly believe that Anthony first loved Sienna. We have all these characters who have people who they were interested in before they find the love of their life. And I'm using quotation marks here, because Colin having feelings for Marina does not retract at all away from the absolute all-encompassing love that he has for Penelope. And I think even if he had married Marina, it would never ever be the same.
No.
Yeah. And I mean, the same. There's people who marry people who are not the loves of their life, not pointing any eyes or fingers here.
I'll point them all at myself.
So yeah, I think maybe that kind of side story that we have going on this season with Francesca, but it is kind of it's a real move from Jess Brownell, because in the books, John was just as much. Like he was her first love. He was her great love. She was just very, very lucky to receive two really great loves in her life. Complete different opposite sides of the cloth.
Yeah, because even, and no spoilers here, but even with at the end of her story, with what John's mother says, with what we've seen so far, instead of it being sweet and heartwarming, and now it's gonna seem like grateful, like, and I don't mean grateful in a bad way. I mean almost like thank you for condescending to let him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying not to give it away totally, as
You know
it's
what?
gonna come up later.
I reckon we're a spoilers podcast. Like it is, we can't keep a secret
Yeah,
to
well,
save our lives.
yeah, and John's mother says, "Thank you for letting my son love you first." And
Yeah.
with it being a real, real sincere love, it comes off so beautiful because she was concerned about not doing John's memory justice. But now it's almost going to feel like, thank you for condescending to allow my son to have you first or whatever. Like, but in this way, it doesn't work because in her book, she knew Michael before she was married. So she could have chosen, but didn't, because Michael never said anything. But like, I don't know. It just, I mean, I gotta wait and see. I gotta wait and see.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
a
gonna
wait and
see.
see
We're gonna
person
see
on that.
how it all
Yeah.
plays out because, like, they've changed it so far to the point that I can't even fathom how it's going to play out, and I don't want to wind myself up thinking of all the changes because it may be absolutely breathtakingly beautiful, and I might be absolutely enthralled and in love with it. So I'm just gonna let it play out and see how I feel about it
Well,
afterwards.
and I'll just say that, I mean, I know we're talking episode 1, but I'll just say that we do get more of John. We get to know John as a living, breathing person instead
Hmm.
of a memory, really. And we get to see how he interacts with the family. So I
Mm.
do love that.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I love seeing how he just completely sees Fran for who she is from the jump.
Yeah.
And, she immediately feels seen. She immediately feels like it's so amazing that they don't communicate and they have this already. And Colin and Penelope see each other completely, but the second feelings are involved, like it gets stupid. I don't know.
And this is
How
why
to
we were
say
talking,
it.
and this is why we were talking about how the producers and everything have kind of relied on the fans, the book fans, to guide the series fans in this remark because we literally get, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Fran and John get equal amount of combined screen time as Penelope and Colin
Yes.
this season. So there are a lot of people out there who really thought that this was Francesca's season, joined with Colin's, but realistically, it's actually only a prologue before their book, which we will very likely only get John for, I would guess, one episode. Then they'll kill him off, and then we'll have the whole Michaela storyline. But I digress. We haven't even married her off yet, so let's go back to that.
Well, it's still episode 1.
I know.
Side
Francesca is
stories.
about to walk down the aisle. It's still an aisle. It's just not a wedding
Yeah, it's a
aisle.
presentation aisle. Yeah.
Presentation aisle, and it starts out really good. We think, okay, she's got this. She looks just like Daphne from season 1. She's got her feathers. She's promenading, she's strutting down, and we think it's all going really well. And then she does a Lady Danbury, and apparently her knees weren't feeling that great that day because it appears she doesn't go low enough, and the Queen
Well,
goes from
and we
from
have a mirror. We have a mirror here because she comes in and she sees all eyes on her and she pauses.
yes,
Just like
Penelope at the wedding.
yes, in the joining of hands at the wedding, but she puts on her own armor,
Yeah,
does her biz, and makes it down, continues walking. She needs nobody to search out. She doesn't need to look. Remember, Daphne tells Eloise, I
yeah,
looked at a specific thing on the wall.
yeah.
She doesn't need any of that. She steals herself and she continues walking, head held high and everything. But and what's funny is Lady Whistledown says, and if you need some excitement this season, we have another Bridgerton coming on the market, and it's Francesca. And Francesca's really kind of most boring. And she, and I just mean like because she doesn't want notice. She doesn't want notice. So she's the quieter one and she keeps to herself and
What a
she only
barb.
likes music. So if you don't like music, don't talk to Francesca. But yeah, I just found that interesting. That's like, oh, and if you want interesting, here's Francesca. Here's Francesca, but
Well,
she's not. She's
to
she's
be
very much
complete.
masking in that moment. And even her curtsy, like it's all perfect, quote unquote.
Well,
I did quotes there, folks, but it's boring.
the funny thing
It's
is I actually find her to be, physically speak, and I mean, I know everyone has their own idea of beauty, but in the books, Daphne was supposed to be actually quite plain. And I suppose
mhm.
like they didn't make her up because they were still doing season one makeup at that point, which was at least a little bit more true. There was no
Yeah.
there was no fake eyelashes. There wasn't all this, but this season they've gone for 2024 makeup and it
Yeah.
shows because
Even with the little sticker
yes,
gemstones on
the
the eyelids and
diamantes.
stuff like, yeah.
Yes. So it was
Can
very,
you tell who's
very,
into makeup and who isn't, folks?
but I was thinking back and I have to go back and rewatch it because obviously we know that they have borrowed so many different stories from all the great classics like Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Sense and Sensibility. I was watching Notting Hill the other day and noticed a plot point that the drinks at the Mondrian. We'll talk about that part
Right,
later,
the pity
but
drink. Yeah.
the pity drink and the pretty pity brownie. But then I'm pretty sure Ever After, which is set in a very similar time period, I believe.
Oh, it's way older
I said similar. I'm pretty sure that they put diamantes on her
because
face.
it's, yeah, it's olden days.
Yeah, but I mean, there's barons, there's baronesses, there's come on, just give me this,
Mhm.
okay?
There's courtiers. There's
Yeah,
courtiers. Yeah.
there's a whole court. It's a very similar-ish setting, both in England. We're just going with it, okay? But I'm pretty sure in her makeup choices they actually did use diamantes. If
Yeah. They probably, I mean, but they did very modern, more
the
modern makeup for that
yeah,
too,
the blush
to give it,
and
because it was a fairy tale. It was fantasy.
oh, I love Ever After. It is
And I
spectacular.
think that they did the way they did Francesca's makeup, like she very much looked like a porcelain doll. Like her
She
face was
is
looked like you could break
abs
it.
she's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Hannah Dodd, you're gorge. Like for real.
I
Like she's
love
so
that her
humble
and
about it.
John are a thing in real life. 19th century. Okay, I was way off. 1502. Just 300 years
I was
off.
gonna say
It's
Patty
close.
wins.
It's close enough, okay?
Close enough. It's only 300 years.
I mean, that's just a stone throws
but they
away.
but they still had diamante.
Well, I mean, I'd have to go back and fact check that one, but from memory, I feel like they put not diamantes, but little like pearl stick on kind of.
Yeah, they did something like when she was in the butterfly costume.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So we have Brimsley, though, who is kind of, I think he has a soft spot for the Bridgertons as well, just secretly, because as Francesca's about to walk down the presentation aisle, he says, oh, this is the Bridgerton girl. We know we've had good luck with the Bridgerton girls. And poor Queen, this girl has never chosen her own diamond of the season. It has been chosen by Lady Danbury, Lady Whistledown, Brimsley's influence. Like the girl gets
Yeah.
no choices. And we talked about
She
this.
takes all the responsibility.
She does. And Lady Whistledown
She's like,
slams her for it.
right. It's just like, Colin suggesting he can, get Penelope a husband and teach her how to be charming. Yet later she's like, when I asked you, when you did what? It's like they are rewriting history. And this happens to the queen too, because Lady Whistledown called Daphne the diamond of the first water. And
Yes.
then in season two, Lady Danbury very much pushed Edwina to the forefront so the queen would
Yes.
choose her. And she
Because
was going to choose
she
Eloise,
was
but Eloise
edging.
wasn't present. Yeah.
But and I said this in the last one, like it would have been the most hilarious. Like I need a fanfic of the Queen choosing Eloise as her diamond because that would be absolutely hilarious. As I said, it would be like Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, and Eloise is
Yes.
just running, hiding, using all her siblings to hide behind them, being like, "Please do not show interest in me. I am not interested."
She'd be like, she would have, and I think if she would have been named the diamond, she would have found out who Whistledown was. It would have been way more important. She would have been way more
Yeah.
invested. And she'd have been like, okay, Pen, you are going to say I have malaria. I don't care what you do.
She's like, I don't care if
do
you
not
actually
want this.
give me malaria at this point. I will take it.
Right.
What
Like,
was it?
give me
What was it that
say I got on a ship and went to America. I don't
mono?
care.
Everyone had mono back then.
Yeah, say I have mononucleosis, but they
So
just called it the kissing disease back then.
yeah, well, I mean, she could have maybe gotten it from Theo. They got pretty close there.
Yeah, but I don't think she would want the ton to know she was cavorting with a young man. I mean, just saying political radicals, you don't know if they're, because there was a lot of people with women's rights and stuff like that back then, and there was a women's rights movement. So saying she was cavorting with radicals just is, I mean, that could just be women. So Penn didn't ruin her in terms of possible marriage proposals because she didn't mention a man. But oh yeah, I think that if Eloise was the diamond, that would have been the rom-com year. That would have been straight up. No, it would have been straight up like
Wouldn't it?
buddy
What do you
comedy.
mean rom-com? There is no rom. It is all
Rom,
com.
yeah. It would be Penn. It would be Penn and Penn. I mean, Penn would have to out herself. She'd have to come into Eloise's room like, okay, I got some, and I can fix this.
But you
Right?
also made an interesting point that the queen at this point is very unsure of herself. She has taken an absolute beating over the last 3 seasons from Lady Whistledown. And when I say 3 seasons, I mean because we also see her in Queen Charlotte.
Yeah.
So like, even though it
Queen
wasn't a
Charlotte,
season, it was, we still see their interactions in that series. So we've got the
and
queen
that was
now who
Penn's mean girl phase.
it was her mean girl phase. Yeah, absolutely forgetting her power and putting
Well, I
things a little
think
bit
that
too
if you look
harshly.
at her transition, yeah, if you look at her trajectory, like season one is she's just beginning it and it's fun and she knows she needs to keep it a secret. And then season two
Well, it
was
starts out
kind of understanding, yeah, kind of understanding she has a little bit of power and that she can use it to make people do things. And I think coming into Queen Charlotte is
monkey.
yeah, the anonymity. She's understanding the anonymity of it and that she could almost say anything because nobody's figured her out yet. Like if Eloise can't,
she gets
nobody's
cocky.
going to. Yeah.
She gets cocky, and we
She's
see this season the first thing, it reads out the Lady Whistledown, and the first thing the Queen says is Lady Whistledown is playing games again. And Penelope, she's lost Colin, she's lost Eloise, all she has is Lady Whistledown, so she is 100% playing games with the Queen, and it's not
oh
in the
yeah.
nicest of ways.
No, she's calling out her insecurity. Like she's saying, I'm super observant. Not like she's really truly been in the room with the queen that much, but she absolutely probably well, not in the last few months, but she has definitely overheard conversations between Lady Danbury and Violet in social settings. So I'm sure that she's gotten enough knowledge that way that she can poke at the queen a little bit. But everything she's writing this year, because she's back to being by herself. Mostly is she could be doing a lot more observation, but like we said, she's not. But we talked about that in the first one.
Yeah. So the other thing that we talked about
our GPS got shut off. Sorry.
The other thing that we talked about in the last episode that we didn't that got deleted was the fact that for anyone who loves the Queen, rest assured she will be sticking around. So because Bridgerton, well, more so Queen Charlotte and King George, were based loosely off real monarchs in history. And we were starting to panic because at this point we are set in 1815. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the real life Queen Charlotte dies in 1818. And Jess Brownell has already said that we will have a time jump occurring before the next season, which really started to panic me because I'm thinking, okay, if we get a time jump of 2 or 3 years, which from when Benedict meets Sophie in the next season to when they are supposed to get together, it's meant to be 2 years. So a lot of people are theorizing that we're going to have a 2-year time jump. So I'm thinking, oh no, we may only have 1 year left with the Queen. But Jess Brownell and Shonda have said no. Like, we absolutely love Queen Charlotte so much. We love the actress. She is so amazing that we are going to stay away from actual history. It's not accuracy. We're just borrowing from it, and we're going to keep her.
They're saying they created an alternate timeline. So they've decided to be period romance sci-fi fantasy.
And then next thing, aliens come and take the Queen away.
Right?
Honest.
Colin's like, I've been around the whole world. Where else can I go? And he becomes an astronaut in 1819.
Sorry, even astronaut Colin. Oh, his butt would look real good in those astronaut pants, I bet.
No padding there.
No padding needed.
Yeah.
Okay,
Farley the bugs.
let's move on to the Bridgerton Bros, shall we? Okay, so on the way to the Queen's presentation, we kind of jump forward. We're going to jump back a little bit. On the way to the Queen's presentation, we have our first interaction of just the four brothers together, which is our ABCG, Anthony, Benedict, Colin, and Gregory. And I love that you get to see the kind of birth order of each kid, the different personalities that comes with that birth order. It's the first time that we actually see Gregory's personality showing more than just I'm being an annoying little brother to my sister and throwing peas at her.
Yes, or ribbons, literal ribbons. 2 seasons. When you see Gregory in a room with Hyacinth, she's chasing him because he stole
he's
a
being a
ribbon.
kid. Yeah. So this is
Yeah,
the first
being
time
a
that
kid
he's
brother.
I think they're starting to like lay the groundwork for much future. But they did the same with Colin.
Yeah.
The first season, they had him be the annoying little brother to the two older brothers. He's just slightly too old to fit in with the older brothers, but slightly too young to fit in with the older brothers, but slightly too old to fit in with the younger brothers. So he's in that middle ground. And now we have Gregory replacing that role to show, okay, Colin has graduated from being little boy into
Yeah.
being
He
big boy
is
now.
now. It is the Bridgerton bros, like the threesome, the three
Yeah.
musketeers, and Gregory.
And Gregory, the family pet.
And you see, like, also with, with Anthony being married and being, not having to be so serious, or having a partner, really having a partner that not only I think takes some responsibility from him or understands his responsibility, but also is kind of teaching him to trust, like, hey, we're going to go on this honeymoon. Benedict's going to have to do it. And now you see Benedict and Anthony like very much marrying each other. Like they're very equal, even though they're first and second son. Their head tilts and everything, which a lot of the people on the internet were like, oh, even though they don't look alike, you can see the family resemblance. But I also took that as they're both playing that patriarch role.
Yeah.
When Anthony's there, he's the patriarch, but when Anthony's gone, Benedict is the patriarch. So they're both looking at Gregory in the same way because they are both on that same level. They're almost like interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have one, you definitely can find the other and get the job done. But then you see Colin, who's the most changed, obviously, because it's his season. He had to have a glow up. But he's the most changed, and he's definitely matured. He's definitely physically matured, more in line with the bros. But as Gregory is trying to be part of the group, he's kind of looking at him like, dude, I've been there. I know exactly what you're like. His smile is not so much indulgent, like, oh, isn't he cute? Like Anthony and Benedict are. He's like, nudge, nudge. I've been there, bro. Been there. Yeah. You'll get there eventually.
This scene, I think, was, very, very specifically put into this episode to show the graduation of Colin from being the little brother to now being an equal Bridgerton bro, and that now Gregory has taken that place of, okay, you're the young one in the group, you're going to annoy us. Colin, what have you been up to? We want to hear about you. Like, you're not telling us, you're not being, that excitable young boy that wants to just prove himself. He's like, I don't need to prove myself. I am myself. So we see that.
I'm not going to bore you. I don't need to tell you anything. I had my experience. It's my experience. Like,
and then
like
obviously
learning, he doesn't have to talk about it for it to have still happened.
And then we obviously have the garden party transpire, which we've already talked about. So we will skip ahead from there to Anthony taking out just Benedict and Colin. And I love this interaction because you can see the effect that Kate has had on Anthony. He is a completely changed man. He willingly, like, he's smiling. He jests with his brother, like from season one, where he was just, the sideburns are gone. Thank the Lord for that. Because it made his face really, it made his face really solemn, very serious. And this season, he's light, he's bubbly, he's happy, he's in love. The weight is now taken off his shoulders, and he is sharing that burden with Kate, who is also teaching him to share the burden with his family, that it doesn't all have to be on his shoulders. And so he's there to congratulate Benedict on helping step into that family role of, hey, I now realize I can rely on you. You are reliable. I know that you're that silly, like, life of the party kind of a guy, but I understand now that actually you are capable. If something were to happen to me, you are capable. And I love that I can entrust you to take care of the family. And Colin, I think he knows that it would be like a dual effort, and that Violet is always going to be there to fill in those matriarch roles that Anthony in the first season thought he had to take on.
Yeah. Like he definitely, I like that we see true to Benedict form. Like, while I love a good afternoon tipple, so he's a day drinker, folks. Benedict is a day drinker. He's like, what do we owe this time to? And he's like, oh, I just wanted to thank you. All the I's are dotted, T's are crossed. And Benedict is like, is that, like a compliment or a dig at me? And he's like, maybe a bit of both. Like, because I was not sure you could do it. Because every time I went to find you in the last 2 years, you were at a party and drunk, or you were high as a kite, or you know what I mean? Like you were sipping the tea.
One of my favorite, like the face when in season 2, he knocks over his wine and his mother's like, and he goes,
and that was the dinner that Anthony was going to propose at. And he couldn't
Until
do it
he
because
did
his
that.
family, his family is just embarrassing him. Like, Colin won't shut up about his travels. Like, I was talking to him about Greece and the stars, and Benedict is just knocking shit
high as
over.
A kite.
And part of me, just he's not even in the room. He's flying above the room. Okay, and Anthony is just so embarrassed by his family that he can't do it. But now we see, like, hey, you guys are actually reliable. And, Benedict, I didn't think you had it in you, but you did. And that's great. I came home. There's nothing I have to do. And that's awesome. And Benedict's like, yeah, but I don't have a purpose and I don't know what to do. And just Colin is like, his eyes rolled so far back, he could read his own thoughts. Literally, his eyeballs. I mean, he just was so, like, the word purpose to him has become a bad word, I feel like.
When
like,
they say that word, he's like,
like
exasperation
kind of like,
central.
Kind of like how the way he says sensible later, and you could tell he just does not like the word sensible. Like, when he says, I don't feel like I have a purpose, it's just like, oh, if I hear the word purpose one more time. I am so tired of purpose right now. But then he's like, take his attention off me. And Anthony's like, oh, and I wanted to congratulate you on all your admirers. And you got to remember, like, probably it's different clothes. So I'm going to guess like the next day or whatever. This is like the next day. So Colin's in different clothes, but the garden party happened like the day before, maybe a couple days before. We don't know. It's Bridgerton time. You can go to 17 cities around Europe in 4 months. So we don't know when it is.
Everyone's
don't
a
worry
magician.
about time. They're going to have clocks on every mantle, and you're going to have timepieces hanging from your vest.
But you will have no idea.
You will have no idea how time works.
The literal and someone actually questioned me on this, and so I'll put it in the podcast that they hear as well. We'll probably put this into our group at some point as well. But the only reference that we have of time is if you actually look at the balls, when they go to each ball, they usually pen in on the dance cards that the girls are holding. Each of the dance cards has a date on it. So we know that each season runs from April, which usually the first week of April, I think it's the 6th of April, 1815 this year, that Lady Danbury hosts her first ball. And then the last ball is always held in August. So it doesn't go with the official timeline of real life
seasons, because
real season
were after
Christmas.
After Michaelmas and Christmas into the spring, because most of your weddings occurred in like May and June. That's why June weddings are a thing in our.
It followed the Parliament.
In town for Parliament.
So the reason that the real life season begins when it does is because real life Parliament is in session. It finishes off. So all of the lords and the most highly esteemed people in society,
the landowners.
All the landowners are already in London for Parliament. So it is the time where the mamas know that is the best prospects for their daughters, is to secure themselves the highest of standing, is to center the whole season around Parliament ending. So that is.
And just to be facetious, then the reason that we have so many Lord Squad members, and by Lord Squad, we mean jerks. The reason we have so many Lord Squad members is because they're doing their Bridgerton season at the completely wrong time. So they're just getting the chum.
It's a very good way of putting it.
He's like, Colin says, I don't know why why that should cheer me. Like, he doesn't care about those admirers. He doesn't care that the girls are, I mean, and it's almost like he has new boy in town energy because he did come back from travels. He looks so different, and everybody, all the girls are just taken with him, kind of like he has new guy in town, you know?
Yes.
How Edwina had new girl in town energy last year. So I think that he's like, all of these eyes on me. I don't want a single one. The one person that I give a crap about just gave me the cut yesterday. I'm still trying to figure that out. Like, this is not what I want. I don't want admirers, but and I said this in the deleted. So I think it's important to note here that Anthony is so in love. Anthony has become a mama. He's just like their mother. He's trying to marry off his brothers because when Benedict says he doesn't have purpose now, Anthony brings up, mother's got a list of young ladies for you.
Yes.
And the only reason Colin's butt is in that seat is because he wants to congratulate him for all of his admirers. Like, come on, brothers, get married with me. Be married. It's awesome.
Well,
he fought it
for so long. He fought it for so long for so many different reasons. And then he realized, oh my, like, is this how good life can feel? And it's not to say that you have to be in a relationship to be happy. It's just that he thought he couldn't be happy in a relationship because of all the trauma that he had from Edmund. And I think a lot of that trauma actually plays into the scene as well, because in the last season, we saw Anthony go into the study with Gregory, and he realizes in that moment that he has not been the older brother, the father figure that those children kind of deserved. And that probably plays a little bit even into his older siblings as well, that he puts them down a lot, or not intentionally, but he's made Colin feel not worthy. He's made Benedict feel like, oh, well, you're just a drunk or whatever. You will never be able to take over from me. And he was
very judgmental of the older ones because he didn't know how to be a leader with them because they were closer age.
Yeah, it was really, really hard for him to fit that dynamic of being bigger brother and father figure. And so I think in this moment, he is thinking back to that moment with Gregory where he realizes, hey, I've never really talked about our dad. I haven't really been the father or given you the guidance that you kind of deserved. And I think in this moment, he was trying to make up for that and compliment his brothers. I mean, albeit Colin, he was well off with what Colin wanted to hear, but at least I think he was trying.
Yeah, and I think actually that probably mirrors when Portia is now trying to, like, Featherington support each other.
Yes.
And, and Penelope's like, was that what you were doing earlier? You were supporting me? Like, Colin's the same way there. He's like, I don't know why that should cheer me, right? But I'll equate it to this. Like, Anthony trying to marry his brothers off because he now knows married life is pretty awesome for him is like us as Bridgerton fans. Like, when and correct me if I'm wrong, Bridgerton fans, but I know that once you discovered the show, you went to people and was like, do you watch Bridgerton? You should watch Bridgerton. You need to watch. You must make haste. Watch Bridgerton. Like, I have people that started watching Bridgerton. Well, honestly, I have friends that started watching Bridgerton because I told them I was doing this podcast. They listened to me on the podcast, had never watched Bridgerton. And they're like, oh, I got to watch this show. And so I've gotten people to watch Bridgerton that way, but you want to have Bridgerton friends to talk about Bridgerton with. And he wants his brothers married so that he can talk. And that's why I think when the bros have that scene and Benedict is like, to your wives, Anthony's like,
yeah, I'm not the only one.
I'm not the only one.
Anthony has recently realized the absolute married bliss, and he wants to kind of encourage his brothers down the same path.
Like, because Benedict enjoyed having a purpose doing Anthony's job.
So and remember, maybe you'll enjoy my other purpose too, being a married man.
Being married. Mama's got a whole list of people. And I love that they reference the list because seriously, in the books, there's a list.
There is a list, and that is how the whole Penelope Collins situation.
So I like that there was a list mentioned.
I really wish that Collins' list was a whole bunch of made up women's names and then Penelope's.
Like Eloise, like Mama Bridgerton is just like Eloise. So it'd be like, William Shakespeare. or a bunch of ladies that are completely already married, like Agatha Danbury. Right?
Mama, all these ladies are already married, are they? I'm so sorry. Are they?
I thought there was at least one that wasn't.
Oh, Well, Penelope Featherington's not married. What about her?
Right.
Subtle mama,
So,
subtle.
so I like that the list got mentioned, and I think it works better in the show that it's not mentioned for Colin, because you really get that sense that she's just expecting. I mean, she turns around and she's excited, because I think that moment of excitement for her wasn't about their engagement so much as it was about,
I'm
finally,
right.
one of my kids listened to me this year. Because she'd been so insecure because of what happened with Eloise, and she was so like, kind of like the queen, how the queen is insecure
Elated.
to name a
Yep.
diamond. They're both feeling, they're like, oh my gosh, am I really any good at this, meddling business? And like, she just gives him a little kick in the pants. It wasn't even a big kick in the pants. She gives him a little kick in the pants, not even talking about women at all. Don't let your armor rust. And he comes home like, and just the look on his face, like, I knew what you were saying, mama. Okay.
Talking about our connections and our side stories all playing into the main plot, Mama Bridgerton is losing her purpose if her children do not need her. Like, this entire episode specifically, we have Francesca managing her mum, saying, I don't need you. I can do this on my own. I know what I want. I don't need you kind of meddling. She has Eloise, who refuses to be meddled with, and she's like, all right, I'm going to hands off with that one. She has Colin and Benedict, who they're just, Colin, we've got the whole, like, I think she knows that something's going to go on with Penelope, and she's just letting it ride out. Benedict, she knows that's just a lost cause. Like, he is not in a place to be meddling with. And then Gregory and Hyacinth are too young, and her older kids are already married off. So this is her only purpose, and Francesca is sort of taking that away from her this season. Like, she's like, I don't, and like, we talk about purpose, and then that's why she finally has the space for her garden to be watered, because she is now fulfilling her purpose again. Her purpose, like, she is back to her equilibrium. When she was out of sorts with Francesca, and like, she could see that something was going on between Colin and Eloise, like, she was not in a place for it. But now that her purpose is being fulfilled again, where she has that role of mama, now she is ready to be garden.
Well, and I think too, like, her confidence was killed a little bit with what happened with Eloise. So we see her struggling with confidence. And that's honestly the theme of a lot of, most of the characters this season, is that something happened to shake their confidence, and how do they navigate that? Like, and trying to hold on to something, hold on to a belief system, hold on to something and sometimes you just need to let it go.
We have our big three. The three queens. We've got Danbury, the queen, and Violet, all kind of floundering a little bit this season. Like, Agatha, because of that childhood trauma with her brother, the queen, because Penelope's messing with her, Lady Whistledown, and then Violet, because her children are like kind of pushing her purpose aside.
Yeah, well, and the queen too, because 2 seasons now, the person that she named the incomparable did not choose her Crawford suitor. So,
actually, I'm going to side tangent here. Side tangent. Looking back at Queen Charlotte, no wonder that she has lost her sense of her abilities to find steady matches when she's got 15 children, and how many of them are actually in healthy, loving relationships, and how many of them are just out creating unofficial heirs all over the bloody kingdom. Like,
but that is her story arc, and I think it's going to play out. I think it's going to play out over all of the seasons. And honestly, because she's never had a interaction with Benedict, and that got mentioned, like her Golda DeRushno or something. Sorry if you listen to this ever, Golda. I didn't know how to pronounce your last name, but Golda and Luke Thompson did press this year together, and question, and they sent PR submissions ahead of time. How many times did we hear who forgets their lines the most and crap like that? And how many times did we hear about the broken chaise? You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things PR wants them to talk about that they give to the interviewer. And in almost every interview I saw the two of them, it was like, you guys have never had a scene together. Your character has never talked to them. And it's like, yeah, it really hasn't happened. So I think like it's going to play out in Benedict's season somehow, that the queen finally realizes all of these people that she has highlighted as being exceptional and being the catch of the season, she's presenting them with the typical things that a person looks for in a marriage. Like, going into her marriage, it was advantageous. Obviously she's going to be marrying a king, and she's being brought in the advantage advantage is to diversify because, their little project they were doing. So she came in, she found love. They fell in love with each other, but she's not equated the two. She said the marriage contract, the reason they got together was this. So she's doing the same thing Violet's doing. She's trying to get everybody into a contractual thing of advantage. Here's a prince, Daphne.
Yeah.
Here's a Marquis, Francesca. It's going to be advantageous for your family. It's going to be advantageous for you. But they end up finding love. And
I think it was a love match. Formula. Like as he, like the very last scene is, you didn't go over the wall. Like he fell in love with her the moment that she tried to climb over the wall to get away from him.
Yes, but I don't think she did.
No.
Her love grew.
I think it is a little bit like the enemies to lovers, where I think she loved him, but she was fighting it because she did not want to love him and give herself that vulnerability. I think she loved him the entire time.
And she knew there was something secretive going on too. So she wasn't about to give her whole heart until she knew the whole story. Started. I just want to say, like, she's trying her formula, just like Violet has her formula. Like, you have to, it's got to be a love match, and love looks all the same. You got to, like, not be able to use your words, and it's got to be fervent and whatever. And she's like, no, you go for advantage first, and then you grow to love them. That's what worked for me. They're both just following the formula that worked for them, and they're both
because they were both so in love that they can't imagine a love any other.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about another really beautiful love story that we have in the season. So we're still at Mondrick's bar. Will Mondrick walks up to the Bridgerton bros and, is having a wee chat with them. They ask him to join them for a drink. And he says, I would, fellas, but wife's business comes first. Now, we love to talk about, between you and I, we've talked about a lot in the past how Will Mondrick and Alice Mondrick, how their story kind of is a complete juxtaposition to Colin and Penelope this season, because we have Will, who is completely willing to accept, to accept that his wife is the matriarch of the family. He's willing to accept her as that strong female lead and willing to kind of take her advice and follow her lead. Like, he does take a while to give up, and we will talk about that later. But in the line that he says immediately, and this gives us a little window into how their relationship is going to play out. He says, wife's business comes first. And that is 100% the core of who he is his family and his wife. They are his main priority, and they will always come first. And so
it was Regency for happy wife, happy life.
It was. and I think, like, myself included, wonder a lot why we get so much of Will and Alice. And it is really hard because I do actually really, really enjoy their story. I just resent that it takes time away from Colin and Penelope. So, like, it's not that I want either. It's that I want it all and just more of.
Like, why is it only 8 episodes, Shonda Rhimes?
It needs to be 10.
It needs to be 10. Because Thank you. 10 is perfect.
Because 10's a nice even number, but it's because
10, yes. Monk says so. 10 is a nice round number.
Yeah. So, like, Netflix, I think it's Netflix who are doing this more than Shonda, because if I look at their other major performing series at the moment, they're all 8 episodes. So they are really cutting down, and they want to put this humongous budget, take away the balloon scene, and give me I swear they could have filmed a whole extra episode with the balloon funding.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about Will and Alice. So this is the moment where we meet Sir Walter Dundas, Esquire, pompous little man vibes.
Very, yes.
So I've rewatched the scene many, many, many times to get his entire vibe, and it's actually quite different. So we have him go up, and he is basically explaining to Will and Alice that Alice's son, Thomas, has come into inheritance, and he very much makes it, you haven't, your son has. He's very much digging in that point. But I actually looked at his facial expression. So in the first moment, Will offers him a drink, and he goes, no. No, and it is it is the kind of
most condescending, yes.
It is the most pompous, condescending sound that came out of his mouth that, like, you have a visceral reaction to him. Like, what was that response? And it made me instantly dislike him. And then so I watched the rest of the interaction going into it with that dislike. But then I rewatched it again yesterday, and he actually almost looks happy for them. Oh, there's this great thing that is coming upon you, and he actually looks almost happy for them. And I do wonder whether, because he is that little man in society, where he is not brought up in with a silver spoon in his mouth, whether he kind of appreciates that a family who have made something for themselves is actually being elevated in society. And that is why he responds so poisonously with Portia later on, because she is a family, the Featheringtons are a family who have that title, but maybe don't deserve to have that title because of the actions. So
I don't appreciate their privilege. Yeah.
Yes. And so I actually have, if we had recorded this a few weeks ago, I probably would have spoken very, very differently. But upon, like, if I take away that alcohol comment and just watch his facial features after that, he's actually, go.
Not just alcohol. The comment he made when she's like, oh, yes, I knew her when I was young.
Colder
Very
still.
cold lady. And she's colder still. Like, first of all, she just said she's a cold lady. You don't know what kind of relationship they had. You don't know how she's going to react to hearing that she's passed away. She has known her in her lifetime. And
it was quite a callous comment.
It was very callous. And after he says no twice about the drink. He says no immediately, like instant reaction, then laughs, looks around the bar and says no again.
Like, as if he is above it. I am above sullying my body with your poison.
Yeah. Like, and there's nobody in here like that I would.
And I think it's because he takes himself more seriously than I think he looks down on society in the way that I'm an educated man. I've worked for what I have, and you guys are just born with a silver spoon in your mouth. And I think he has a chip on his shoulder about that. And that is actually now how I'm more taking his interactions.
Yeah, because he does come in like his vibe, and we'll talk about it later. We keep saying that because we want to talk about it now. His vibe with Portia is very different, and I kind of get almost like it's a violation.
Yeah. He's a small man who's trying to make himself big and important, and everyone in Bridgerton is almost like fighting for power in their own different way,
or fighting to just keep what they have.
Well, I mean, and we have that in, I'm going to say episode 6, just after the wedding dance, where we have Lady Danbury playing the game of chess with Queen. I'm about to say Golda, but that's not
no, that's in
6 or 7. It's after the wedding, so it must
be
7.
7 is the wedding, so it's the beginning. I think it's in 8 actually, the beginning of 8, because it's like a time filler between. No, that was Benedict. The time filler between I'm gonna go see her tomorrow, then threesome. And then it's tomorrow. Like, Benedict was just like the
banging away the days.
if we need to show the passage of time, we're going to be in Lady Tilly's bed showing the passage of time.
Like, why could we not show the passage of time with Colin and Penelope just enjoying each other in bed like it was in the books? Come on, give me that.
Yeah,
I'm
bitter. I'm bitter about that.
Okay, let's. We're always going to be bitter. So Walter,
we'll always be bitter about that. But yes, so he's condescending, but I think that he's elevating them, so he feels some power in that moment. Because if you look at the letter, like,
he's giving the power.
He is, because that letter is in his hand. You see it signed by him. There is no will.
Yes.
The last person was the dowager, because a lady cannot pass on a title or the land or anything. She doesn't own it.
Yes.
Her husband was passed and she was just kind of chilling, and there's no male heir by the time she passes away. So, or, nobody closer in the family. So Dundas, and part of his happiness in handing over this letter too is probably because, like, when he talks to Portia, he's like, it's a lot of work for me to try and figure out who's next. So he's finally done.
Because, forgive me if I'm wrong, but he is a lawyer of such. Esquire is like a lawyer.
He's a solicitor that works for the crown specifically to make sure that the lines of succession are stay within. And this is important.
But he's almost like a private detective in that right as well. Yeah. Okay, so
what's important is he says that keep the lines of succession, forget the word, but basically keeps everything upright, upstanding. So the fact that it's Will and Alice's son, yes, it's a boxer and his wife, but I personally think that there's some,
and because I believe that Will Mondrick, from memory, the son of a boxer, I believe that story is actually true to history, in that they did have a black son of a boxer who came into his own money, and he came into society not as a lord from memory, but We'll have to look into this before our next
No,
recording.
Will's character is based on a real historical figure. And it's an American boxer who ended up moving to England and got down on his luck, and he like started boxing again, but he ended up making his own money and kind of had he was in and out, because some people just are on the wall, like they don't get to fully enter, but they're allowed to be there. So like not all the balls were, if you look at Regency etiquette, which I do, not all the balls are just lords and ladies and their progeny. Solicitors and merchants who end up making a lot of money can sort of enter society, because they become a good match for, say, a fourth or fifth daughter out on the market, where the first daughter didn't marry very well, because they know their daughter is going to have security.
I was watching Miss Potter the other day, which is the story of
Renee Zellweger.
Yes. And that mama made me laugh so much, because they weren't even from a titled family themselves. Like they were like gifted this title, or like they worked their way up to where they were. And when she wants to bring over her publisher, so this is the story of Beatrix Potter. It's set in Regency times, and it follows how she published her books and all this. And like, it just reminded me a little bit of Penelope, because in that time, women were not supposed to write, illustrate, like, because then you were considered working class. And the mum is absolutely aghast at the fact that she wants her publisher to come into the house. Like, you cannot invite working class into our house. They will bring their dust with them.
Yeah.
I lost so, like, not the dust and germs of the working class.
Yeah. We see a big issue with working and being in society, which completely amazes me that Penelope is given the ability to work as a woman.
And I love that. Like, she is now, realistically, like, she is the first working class titled woman, because, she's technically not titled, but
her son is,
and she comes from a titled family, so she is the first titled working woman realistically, and I love that for her. Like,
Jane Austen published a few years before her,
but
in real life,
but she didn't publish under her own name, unlike Penelope Featherington.
She just published as a lady.
Yeah, so
she had her brother handle the publishers.
Yeah, we will talk about Mondrick family a little bit more in our next episode, as I want to dig into that excerpt from Lady Whistledown coming into the second half of the first episode, because it has a lot about them to unpack in there. And so I want to talk about some of those finer details as we lean a little bit more into that Mondrick storyline. So for right now, we'll leave it off here, and we will start up again in the next episode. In next week's episode, we will conclude episode 1, Side Stories, hopefully, where we will talk about the I am a realist. We will talk about the Mondrick family coming into their inheritance. We will talk a little bit about Mr. Dundas Head. I don't know why, but I always think of him as Mr. Potato Head. It's just the vibes. And we will talk about basically the Danbury Ball and all the kind of things that happen afterwards, including the Lady Whistledown article. So we will have another big episode for you next week to power through. Apologies for that. For today, gentle listeners, we will leave it there and continue on next week's episode. If you have anything particular you would like us to cover on any Bridgerton knowledge you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. And once again, thank you for listening to the musings of two mad women. Yours truly, Tash the Kiwi.
And Lady Patty.